Hi there, and welcome to the Anita Chat podcast. I'm your host, Anita Rombo, and this is the podcast for growth-oriented women to have authentic, real talk. Nothing is off the table here, but as an intuitive self-relationship coach, you'll find the content gravitates towards mindset, intentional action, spirituality, and all things wellness. So if you're ready to learn, laugh, show up, and glow up to be the best version of yourself, grab your favorite bevy, settle in, and we've got lots to chat about. Hello and welcome to another episode of Anita Chat. Today I am so glad to welcome Melissa Leone. She's a 20-year finance and accounting professional passionate about teaching women to manage their time and money. Melissa co-owns 2 Cents Consulting and is a podcast host and author of the #1 bestseller, Efficiency Bitch. And Melissa, a girl after my own heart, has climbed the corporate ladder while raising small children, and she uses Bitch, or BITCH, to teach the 5 pillars of having it all without doing it all. Melissa, welcome to the chat.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again. I'm happy to be here. I've spent the last several years building a business, having a corporate job, raising 3 kids. And then I really started to hone in on my book and my message. And I use the word bitch as an acronym to define the 5 pillars of having it all without doing it all. And it's bank, inbox, time, connection, and harmony.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And again, for our listeners, Melissa and I had a quick chat before this recording, and we got along really well. There's a lot of similarities. Obviously, we both come from a corporate background. We're both raising children. We're both writing books. We're both about empowering women. So I'm really, really excited because I think a lot of our listeners will be able to resonate with what you're going to be sharing with us today. So my first question for you, you kind of answered. I wanted to know more about what the acronym stood for. So thank you. And I'm wondering if we can, throughout the course of our chat today, go into maybe some actionable strategies that we can employ within each of those pillars. But before we do, you piqued my curiosity when you said having it all without doing it all. Mm-hmm. How do you do that, in your opinion?
Yeah. You don't do it. You just don't do it all. You can have it all. You just can't do it all. And what I mean by that is, I believe women are in a tricky and unique spot in evolution of our gender. And, we've been taught, just depends on where you live in the world. But I think overall, people would assume that women have always been the caretakers, often were the ones taking care of the nest. That's still very true in many parts of the world. Where you and I live in North America, that is starting to change and evolve, and has been changing over the last 40 years or so, where women have been starting to enter the workforce and hold very high level positions in the workforce. But what we're not seeing shift is the duties at home are still often staying with women. And the generation before us, so I'm 42 almost. I almost just said 40.
I'm almost 42 40 for today. I'm 45, so I'm happy to be 40.
Okay, so we're the same age. The women before us are burning out and they're exhausted, and they're showing an example to younger women to say, don't bother trying to do both. It sucks. It's not the way to go. And I agree, don't do it all. It sucks, but do the things that feel right, that fit right. I'm doing a lot of things and I'm not burnt out. And it's because I'm willing to delegate things to my partner, to my children, to other areas. I'm also willing to say no to things. I say yes to the right things. And I can go on and on and on about this stuff. So you'll have to stop me when you're ready. But
you're women my love language. So keep going.
Women could absolutely have it all. I use an example often, and I use it in the book. When I first had kids, I had this invisible audience watching me, or I felt like I did. And it was like, breastfeed for a year, make your own baby food, use cloth diapers, work full time, get rid of your mommy weight. Like, I had all this stuff that was coming at me. And I thought I had to do all of those things. And I did all of those things. And then I had another kid and I still did all of those things. Plus I had a toddler. And so I had this new audience that was joining the party and telling me all these things I had to do for my toddler. And then I had a third kid, and I had more people in this audience telling me things I had to do. But simultaneously, I was also climbing the corporate ladder. At this point, with my third kid, I was 35. I had a badass career. I was top of my game, but I was trying to live two worlds independently of each other and work like I didn't have kids and have kids like I didn't work. I was PTO president, a parent teacher organization at school president. I was Girl Scout troop leader. I was a kindergarten room mom. Like, what did I need to be doing all that stuff for? And like, here's the secret. I like my kids, but I'm not really like liking kids. I'm not a kid person. So I don't know what the hell I was doing trying to be a Girl Scout troop leader or a PTO president. Like I was doing things out of because I felt like I had to, not because I wanted to. I was trying to be a mom like I didn't have a job. And I realized that's crazy. And I needed to like stop trying to do all of the things. And once I figured that out and I started doing the things that I liked to do and I wanted to do, it made being a mom more fun. It made being a professional more fun. It made me healthier. I'm able to go to the gym every day because I'm not trying to organize Girl Scout troop meetings. But I still, like, I'm a very busy person by nature, and I want to give back, and I have a lot of philanthropy in me. I've joined non-for-profit boards that are important to me. I joined the Planned Parenthood of Arizona board just last year. I'm on a youth camp board. So I'm still giving back. I'm still participating in life in the way that I wanted to, but I'm doing it intentionally and authentically in a way that makes me feel great versus draining me.
I couldn't agree more. I think, again, a lot of the listeners that are tuning in will also really resonate. And your story sounds so similar to mine, except I didn't have 3 kids. I had 2.
I love the women empowerment stuff that I'm seeing. It's everywhere right now, and it's so fun to be a part of. I also hope that the message is not that men are doing it wrong or that men did this to us. This isn't what this is about, right?
No.
We're in an evolution of the way that we behave as a people, and men need to be along for hearing that conversation and participating in the change that takes place. I was a guest speaker on a panel, a women in leadership panel at Arizona State University about 3 weeks ago. And I was shocked, Anita. About 50% of the audience was male, and the title was Women in Leadership. And I thought, yes, these dudes are showing up. And they're college students. And they weren't, if I had been on a panel of women in leadership for people in their 40s, it would have been all women. And I love seeing the change that's taking place. I really think this next generation is going to actually see a lot of the equality that we've been searching for a long time. And we've gotten equality in a lot of ways, right? I mean, a lot of my book, I talk about, not a lot, but there's a chapter where I talk about feminist history, at least in North America over the last 100 years. And we've come a really long way from not having the right to vote or have credit cards or own land. But, and there's still a long ways to go. But I'm telling you, I was so jazzed to see these young college students really show up to a women in leadership panel and want to hear what we had to say. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I think also, to your point, we are setting the examples for the younger generation. So I have a little boy and I have a little girl, and I want him to know and be, and he is, they both are so immensely proud of me, but I want my daughter to see that she doesn't have to make choices differently than he does. And I want him to see the power of strong women, and what we can contribute. So I think it's just important. It's important for us to be happy when we do things authentically that align with us. Like, I call myself a soul strategist and success coach, and it's all about like finding that right fit for you, right? That's when you are successful inside and outside, because otherwise you could be climbing that corporate ladder and completely burnt out and hating your job and hating your life and doing all the things that you should, but it sucks. Right?
Yeah.
So we gotta really make sure that we're tuned into who we are inside and what we want to consciously.
I love that you're doing that too, because I think so often people are afraid to change their minds. They think, I went to university, so I have to stick with this major, or I decide, I had this career and now I've decided to have children. So this is the path I have to go. I just was reading a social media post yesterday about a woman who was saying how grateful she is that she was a stay-at-home mom, but over the last several years, it's been eating at her and she's resentful and she's hating it. And I just thought, man, change your mind, go back to work. It's okay to change your mind. Just because you thought that was the path for you when the baby was born, it's okay that the baby's in second grade now and you want something else to do. Or it's okay that you thought you were always going to be a working mom and now maybe you want to stay home for a year or 6 months. Like in the States, we don't get maternity leave at all. There's no paid maternity leave here unless your employer provides it, but we are given job protection for up to 12 weeks. And my first daughter, I was in California at the time, and California is a unique state and does provide state-funded maternity leave. So I had 18 weeks of leave. My middle child is also my daughter. I was living in Arizona at the time and no state funded, but my employer covered 12 weeks. And then my third child, my son was born, and I was working for a company based out of Toronto. But as an American, I was not part of the maternity program. So I got 6 weeks. And what a difference to see it in 3 different lights. No, truth be told, third kid, I was like, get the hell out of here, go to daycare. But
they can raise themselves.
Yeah, it's fine. But really different perspectives. And the first kid I had at 18 weeks, I was going crazy. I was like, okay, I got to find something else to do. This is not fun for me. But I know other people who thrive in it, and that's cool. And there's no shame in that. I think if we're all trying to fit into the same box, it's going to get super crowded, super fast. And we all need to be okay to go to wherever we want to and not box ourselves in, not close the lid on that box. Let it be fluid and available, and change your mind as your soul grows and matures, because they do. It's a funny thing about your soul is it grows and expands and learns. And I think as long as you're willing to follow that, you'll feel like you have it all without doing it all.
A lot of the people that I work with, to them, they're at that deep crossroads where they're really coming, especially with the pandemic, right? Like people are realizing they want more out of their life, that life is so short. They've lost out on years that we weren't anticipating losing out on. And they're like, what do I want to do? Am I really happy the way I am? Like, can I change course? And so my role, my mission is really to help people find that course that feels good to them and give them permission. Not that they need my permission, but help them take action to get to where they want to go and give them that roadmap. But having said that, I can't even imagine going back to work as early as you did. I mean, truth be told, you said you didn't love kids, right? But you love yours. I loved kids. And I thought as a young kid, I thought I was going to have 6 or 7. Of course, biology said some other stuff. I ended up with 2. I'm happy with 2. I could not imagine more than 2. Yeah. And when I had them, I was like, I don't know if I love them as much. Like I love my kids, but I don't know if I surprised myself from what I thought I would want and what I always dreamed of to when I actually got it. I was like, oh, this is harder than I thought. No, thank you. Like, we're going to stop right now.
If you'd asked me at 20 how many kids I'd have, I'd say none. I didn't even know if I was going to get married. I was like, no, I'm good. I don't know if I want to be a mom, but things change and I'm glad they did, For sure. You just never know which way it's going to go.
No. And to your point, we got to be open with the pivots in life, the growth and the evolution that happens voluntarily or not voluntarily. Sometimes we have to find a new path because doors close, and that's okay too. Yeah. So let's get to that acronym. Can you remind me what B stands for?
Bank. Money. Right. It's all about money.
Talk to me about money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a finance professional by trade. That's what I spent my entire 20-year career doing. I own a company called 2 Cents Consulting, and we're fractional CFOs. So small businesses, we help with bookkeeping, strategy, cleanup, budgeting, forecasting, number stuff. So this is what I love to talk about is money. It just so happens to be the first letter of the word bitch, which I'll have to tell you the story about the efficiency bitch name because it's kind of silly how it all came to be. But the B piece for me is not only the leading letter of the acronym, but it is the foundation of freedom and your ability to live the life that you want, the way that you want it. And that doesn't mean millions. And I certainly don't believe that money needs to be on your heart, but it should be on your mind. You have to know how to use it at different phases of your life, or it will take control of your life for you.
So do you have any tips for how people can better manage their money?
So many. I'd say my number one tip is always, you have to know how much money you spend, period. When I talk to people about money, they always tell me how much they make. I make $20 an hour. I make $50,000 a year, whatever. I don't care about that number. That doesn't mean anything to me. What I care about is how much are you spending? Because if you're spending more than you're making, or even close to what you're making, you're never going to save. And you have to save for the future. It's just the way that it is. In my book, I talk about a methodology that I learned from my wealth advisor. As a matter of fact, I talk about this in the book too, but I hired a wealth advisor before I had wealth, because I wanted to understand how to build it. I didn't know, no one taught me. So I started working with her, and she taught me this philosophy of 4 pants pockets. And you have a front pocket for your current expenses, and another one next to you for important things that may happen quickly, like you need new tires on your car, your water heater blows out, something like that. Not a ton of money. You lose your job for a couple of weeks, or get furloughed like everybody did during COVID. Mm-hmm. That's what that pocket's for. And then your back to pant pockets, say that 10 times fast, is for long-term savings. So if you're looking to buy a home or pay for a wedding, maybe for your children as they grow, or pay for their college, that's one pocket. And then the final pocket is for retirement. And typically those funds go into different vehicles, depending upon where you live in the world, that can help grow significantly into your later years of life. And you have to think about all 4 pockets individually, because they all have different functions. If you put all of your money in your spend pocket, you will burn through it faster than you even realize what happens. If you put it, some in your spend pocket, but some in your front pocket for those short-term emergencies, you're not going to earn any interest, and your money's actually going to lose value with inflation. So you have to learn those different elements in order for it all to balance.
That's really great advice you were given. I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was my Bible. And I actually still have my copy. And I remember it's an easy read. And I think the advice was pretty golden, pretty time tested, right? Like, of course, there's more things now to add in. But if you get those principles, if you apply those principles, I think that's really important.
Yep, absolutely.
So those 4 dimensions, definitely know how much you spend. I track my budget on my phone, and every week, every Friday, I have a date with my budget just to kind of see where I'm at. So anyways, that's what I do. It might be overkill though. I've got to say, it's not my favorite thing, but that's why I do it over with a glass of wine on a Friday.
It's overkill. I pay attention to my money every day. Believe it or not, I have a P&L for my family. I'm an accountant, so I have to
I married one, so
it's the way my brain works. But I have a line. I've told this story a few times. I just think it's so true about the way that I like to look at money. I have a line on my family's P&L called ice cream. I want to know how much money my family is spending on ice cream. Now, we live in Arizona. I got 3 kids. We eat a lot of ice cream. But I want to know how much it is, because I want to make sure that I can control it. And I talk to the kids about it. Like last month, we spent $400 on ice cream, and they go, whoa, that's a lot of money. And I go, you're right. How about this month we spent $300? And they go, okay. And then at the end of the month, we look at it and we see if we did it, right? Or we'll track it mid-month and come up to how close are we? Are we over? Or we still have time to go? Now, truth be told, you go to get ice cream with a family of 5, it's like $35. So $300 doesn't get you very far in the summer in Arizona. We don't talk about that it's wasting money, but we are tracking it, and we're setting a goal or a parameter or a budget, however you want to look at that, on what we're going to spend less than. And it's a simple way of looking for one specific thing that you want to measure so that you can manage. And that's really what money control is all about.
I love that level of detail too. Again, that's something that I would do.
It's not all like that. Like, I don't have everything that detailed, but you can pull out the things that you want to. And that's what's cool, right? Like,
That's right.
you can pull out one specific thing that is a luxury. If you want to pull out how much you spend on that coffee, that latte every morning, pull that one thing out. You'll be surprised how much it adds up. This is a really common trick for people who are smokers. People who try to coach on helping people quit smoking are like, figure out how much money you spend, and their eyes light up like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been spending that much money. And oftentimes it's a trigger to support the quitting. So be surprised how much money one can spend in certain things without really noticing.
Totally true. So talk to me about the I. What does the I stand for?
I is inbox. So it's all things. Life is an inbox, right? Everything that we touch is an inbox, both from my email and my text messages. My home has an inbox. There are certain things that have to be maintained. My car has maintenance to it that has an inbox. The kids certainly have their own inboxes. And so that chapter in that philosophy is really just about organizing your inflow so that you can organize your outflow and be as efficient as possible. I have a lot of philosophy around touch it once. If I can't take care of it right now, I put it in a place where I will get to it when I have time. And I don't stack things in a pile. I have specific order in which they get managed, because sometimes things can get buried. So really just having a good flow of your inbox can help with your outbox as well.
Interesting. Any tips there?
Like, I'm big on email clutter. I'm really big on it. Every time I'm sitting next to someone and their email box says 4,052, I'm like, what is that? You can't find anything. You can't think. I know people think that they can think clearly through it. But I'm a big believer in a clean inbox in my email. So anything that you would find in my inbox today means it's something I haven't actioned yet that I need to take care of. I delete things that I don't need. I file things immediately that I've taken care of. I unsubscribe from email lists like a crazy person. And so that for me is an important part of my daily habits in the morning. I'll go through and just check my email for things that I need to do for the day, and I'll delete and unsubscribe as necessary. I know it can be really daunting. Like, my husband is one of them, has thousands of emails in his inbox. And it doesn't bother him, but he also loses shit all the time.
It's funny, my work inbox, like both for my corporate job and also for my business as a coach, those are like very minimal, very well maintained. But my personal email is through the roof. And I probably get like over 200 emails a day. And a lot of them are lists. And yeah, so my husband often just rolls his eyes at me because I always run out of storage. I always have to and then at that point in time, there's this mad panic to like delete and unsubscribe. And he's like, why don't you just do this from the start? I have a good system started, that I've maintained for the other two parts. And I think they're more important. But I haven't been able to kind of institute that. That wouldn't require a massive amount of work.
Sometimes starting over is important. And I mean, I have an email address, a personal email address that I've had since I was a teenager.
Yeah, that's my spam.
I don't use it. Yeah, I don't use it much anymore except for email, with my spam stuff. But even that, I keep pretty organized. Just today, I had a client call me, or a vendor of a client rather, looking for a 1099, which in the States is a requirement if you're a contractor. And I said, yeah, it was emailed to this email address on this day. And she was like, oh, there's like 8,000 emails in there, but she's missing important tax documents because she's not paying attention to those emails. So it is important that you pay attention to those items. And otherwise, you just end up doing it twice. You'll look for it twice. You'll spend more time later. I am all about making my future self as happy as possible and the least amount of stress as possible for her. And so that's really the impetus for a lot of the way I behave with my inbox.
Sounds great. Okay, so talk to me about tea. I think you said it was something to do with time, right?
Time, yes. Time management. So it's my favorite. Well, I shouldn't say my favorite. Bank's really my favorite. But time's a close second. Time and money, right?
You can't get those back. Well, you can't get time back. But
you can't get time back. And that's the thing, that's why it's my other favorite, and maybe equal parts, because it is finite. It will go, you don't get any more. And we all have the same amount. And I believe that how you spend your time really says a lot about you. It says what your priorities are. it says how you want to live your life. And I've certainly had phases of my life where I spent time in ways that didn't reflect my priorities or who I wanted to become. And once I realized like, oh, I'm spending a lot more time in areas than that's how I want to show up, I was able to kind of rewind some of that. So my philosophy around time is automate, delegate, and eliminate. Automate meaning anything that you can do to keep keep track of time, or to keep tasks moving along. You should. I have some examples of that. Like my favorite is, I think I have to say it quietly, but the Amazon Alexa, because she's in here and she might hear me. But I use that I have a couple things for her, actually. I have one at 7:45 that says, it's almost time for bed. Go get ready, brush your teeth. I have one that says it's 8 o'clock, it's bedtime. I have one that says it's 6:30, time to get up. I have one that says it's 7:45, get ready for school. Like I have all these different alarms that are set. Now my kids are not robots. They don't obey all the time, but it does keep me from having to keep track of the time and be always worried that I'm late or worried that I'm doing something. I have an alarm on my watch. I have an alarm on my phone so that I don't miss podcast episode interviews or that I don't miss a meeting. I'm very cautious about setting an alarm for my next thing so that I can focus on what I'm doing without having to worry about what's coming next. Those types of things are very important to me. Also, anything that goes on repeat. I'm a big believer in auto ship. So I have several things for the house and for the family that I need all the time. And so I have them on auto ship from a supplier, from Amazon. And that really helps me not have to think about it. And then when they show up, I just know it's time. An example I like to use is in Arizona, we use our air conditioning pretty much 365 days a year. It's just always hot here. So the air filters get pretty dusty pretty quickly being in the desert. And so they have to be changed about every 30 days. So I have them on auto ship. I don't have to think about it when they show up. I change them, period. I don't have to think about when it has to be done, and it can just be done on ritual. And then my delegate is really just what it sounds like. I give it away, or I hire somebody to help me. My kids empty the dishwasher, they scoop dog poops, they feed the dog. They're little, so they can't do a lot, but they can do that. My husband cooks. I don't enjoy cooking. It took me a long time to delegate that. I was holding on to it thinking it was my responsibility to cook as the mother. And then I thought, I don't like it. He does. What am I doing? This is crazy. So I delegated. Even using the word delegate in that scenario kind of feels funny because it wasn't my role to delegate, but it did feel like my role that I needed to give up. So I'll preface that with that piece. And then the final one is eliminate, getting rid of things that don't serve you or that don't belong to you. And maybe the dinner is better served in the eliminate bucket for me, although we can't eliminate eating, but it certainly didn't belong to me as my responsibility. So different things like that. And I like to walk through exercises on how to do those things and find those items that you can automate, eliminate, and delegate.
Yeah, I do that a lot with my coaching clients too. And in our house, it comes up because, again, I also have young children and they each have distinct roles. And we call them contributions. My daughter likes to call them chores or jobs. And I feel like she thinks that she's validated because of her ability to participate in those. So I have to be very careful because I don't want her to think that that's why she's important or why she's valued or she's special. But it's very clear, like we have to make it very clear that everyone who's here has a contribution to make. And that's just the way that we've kind of ran our household, and it really works. Like it really does actually help. And as they get older, they can take on more, and it just feels really good.
Yeah, I agree. We've recently instituted paying the kids for jobs that are outside of their regular contributions. I mean, to your point, they have contributions that they need to make to live here. It's just part of being in a family and having a group, and that exists in the real world, right? We pay taxes as a community in order to have roads and hospitals and things like this.
CPA talk.
I know, it really is, isn't it? So It is important though, right, that our children learn to be part of a community, because that's what a civilized society is a giant community that has to work together. But there are also things that we do that are maybe outside of the normal scope of that. So we had a big project recently where we cleaned out the garage, and we said to the kids, if you'd like to help, you can earn some money. And they all wanted to help, and they all are starting to learn a little bit about money management. If they want to buy candy at the store, they use that money, and just little things like that you can start to bring them along for the ride. It doesn't have to be super serious or super rigid when they're little. They'll get the hang of that part of it pretty easily. The spending comes easy. It's teaching them to save that's a little more difficult.
Another technique that really works well in our house is every quarter we go through, or when things get unruly, we go through their closets for the seasons. And we also go through their toys, because often they, you know how it is. But whatever we've got, we make piles, so there's something that we can donate. We try to eliminate as much as possible, like taking things to the dump. So we'll try to find uses for them. And they are very active participants, because part of that, one of those buckets of piles is to go back to resale. And they get to keep the proceeds of whatever comes their way as a result of the resale. So not only are we purging, but we're making room and money for them to get another toy that they would really want, or another piece of clothing that they really need. But it's very motivating for them to get on board when they know that they're getting something out of it.
It's awesome. And it's really good. It's good for them in a lot of ways, right? You're teaching money management. You're also teaching that you can change your mind. You can like a toy now, and maybe your future self isn't going to want it. But I really like also the sustainability practice that you're teaching as well, that you can put it back out. It can be a treasure for someone else. And then go shop at a secondhand store or on a marketplace, like on Facebook, so that you can buy something secondhand too. Because there's a lot of stuff in this world right now. I'm all about trying to use it 2 or 3 times.
Totally. So the next acronym kind of goes hand in hand with what we just talked about, contributing to a greater cause. Can you talk to me about the next letter?
Yeah, connection for me. Originally, it was going to be community was the name of that category, but it just didn't fit quite right. But my husband came up with connection, and that actually fits so much better for me. I am a philanthropist just by nature. My grandparents were really into philanthropy. My parents are. It's just part of the way I was raised. And it's important to me, but doing it in the way that I mentioned earlier, out of obligation or out of what I thought I was supposed to do and not being authentic to myself, ended up hurting me rather than helping me. It didn't fill my cup. It actually exhausted me. Finding things that I can contribute now that actually fill my cup, make me feel stronger, make me feel better, are certainly really fun. And it's all of those different ways that we connect as humans. In the chapter, I talk about the way that you talk to people and the way that you negotiate things to get what you want, whether it be at work or at home. It all matters. The way that another person connects with you completely impacts your efficiency. It impacts your future happiness. It impacts their current happiness in a lot of cases. And it's a really important part, I think, of being human, and particularly living in this environment that we're in today. There's so much opportunity to do things remote. I mean, you and I having this conversation is a perfect example, on opposite sides of the continent from one another, but are still able to connect in a way that even 5 years ago, we would have been over the phone, right? Versus being on video where we can see each other and talk and be able to connect that way. So it's a really important part for me of that. One final piece that I'll add to that is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend time with. Or I truly believe that. And there's been many points in my life, as a matter of fact, where I have chosen to surround myself with people who I was becoming their average, and it wasn't what I wanted to be. It wasn't who I wanted to become. And I really had to reflect on that and say, like, that's true. And it's not a numbers game about, am I better or worse than that person, but is the average of where are we going? Where is that person headed? Where am I headed? And I have taken a step back as an adult in the last several years and said, who do I want to become? Okay. I knew I wanted to be an author. So I started surrounding myself with authors. I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I started surrounding myself with business owners. And I started surrounding myself with people who I wanted to be like. And it's amazing how you automatically lift. There's a philosophy in sports that is not a new one at all by any stretch, but it's that you want to play with players who are better than you so that you can get better. You don't want to be the best one on a team. You want to be the worst one on the team so you can get and you can improve, especially in youth sports. And I think that that's true in this case as well. In order to get better, you need to be around people who are going to lift you and help you become part of their average.
Absolutely. So resonate with that one. That's great. So then I think we are down to the last
harmony.
letter. Yeah, harmony.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me more about harmony.
Yeah, harmony is kind of the ribbon, right, that holds it all together. Again, kind of a coincidence that it's the last letter of the acronym, but it's also really important, and it pulls it all together quite nicely. Originally, it was going to be happiness or health, both of which are really important. But harmony is really the word that we landed on. My mom came up with that one. I had a lot of help from my village on writing my book. But the harmony piece talks about happiness, and it talks about health, and it talks about this intangible concept of work-life balance that doesn't exist. And balance at all in life is very difficult to find, but it is all about harmony, and it's about enjoying the periods of peace and enjoying the periods of chaos, and understanding that there's going to be ebbs and flows to all of it. If you're listening to this and you have an infant, it gets better. If you're listening to this and you have a teenager, they will become adults, right? Like there's different phases of life where things are happening for a reason. And that's kind of what harmony is all about for me.
Yeah. I love it. It's reflecting on the seasonality of life, right? Whether we're always in different seasons, that contributes to our growth. But the one thing that is common throughout all of it is change, right? We change, we grow, we evolve, and there's no such thing as the same for the rest of our lives. So, harmony, for me, when I think of harmony, I think of that inner alignment again. And I think that I'm a bit biased in terms of my passion, but it's about, how can we reconnect with ourselves and do that pulse check repeatedly to make sure that we are honoring where we want to be and where we want to grow and all that type of stuff. Being intentional about the people that we're hanging with, or how we're spending our time and money, all those other pillars that you identified.
Yep.
Well, that's a really beautiful framework. Thank you for sharing that with me. I have two or maybe three questions if you're open to them. So one,
of course,
you alluded to the name Efficiency Bitch was an interesting and fun story. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. When I was 18, I was home from university, and I was at my mom and dad's house. My parents were hosting a party. My parents are big University of Arizona sports fans, and they were hosting a party, I think, for the football game. And I was home, and, they were like hustling around, doing stuff and getting all ready. And I was there kind of just doing my thing, not helping, not hurting, just kind of doing whatever. And I was in the kitchen and I was making a snack, and my mom came in and she said, "Melissa, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. I have an efficient system. Everything's where it needs to be. Leave it alone." And I said something about, "You don't need to be an efficiency bitch." And she was like, "What did you just call me?" But she couldn't get mad at me in the moment because her friends were about to arrive. So I thought, I'm in big trouble, right? She gave me the mom look, but she didn't let me have it. But then 2 days later, I was headed back home to school, or back to school, not to home. And she said, "Do you want to go run errands? I promise not to be an efficiency bitch." And I was like, I'm in big trouble. But she never got mad at me about it. And over the years, it just kind of became something funny that I once said. And then we just kept calling each other that. EB was kind of the way we referred to each other. My sister joined in on the party at some point. So for the last 25 years, at least, we've been referring to each other as EB. And I gave a speech in 2020 about having it all without doing it all. And I needed a title. And my sister suggested Lessons from an Efficiency Bitch. And I was like,
I love it.
Okay, let's roll.
If somebody called me that, I think that would be a huge compliment.
Yeah. I mean, we turned it into one.
Yeah,
we've turned it into one. And, you know, I had to think hard about publishing a book with the word bitch in it. I have 2 young daughters. I'm a professional and a mother, and the word bitch has historically been used as a derogatory term towards women. So I did a lot of research. There's a lot of this information in my book, but the word bitch was originally used in the US and most of North America anyway, around the time of women's suffrage, when women were fighting for the right to vote in the United States in the 1920s. And it became something that the media picked up on quickly, and they started referring to those women, the suffragettes, as bitches, meaning female dogs acting aggressively in heat. And it started to become that word that they used about those women who were acting out of turn, who were acting too aggressively. They were being unkept and they needed to be happy with their place, right? And so it turned into an anti-feminist type of word. Like, we don't want those women to stand up for themselves. In the 60s, it started to become more of an in-group term where women started to take that word back. And then it took all kinds of silly idioms. There's all kinds of weird things that people say about with that. And then it turned into an insult against men, meaning that they were weak, but an insult against women, meaning that they were being too aggressive. And the ironic thing about the word is that there is not an equivalent word that means a man is being too aggressive. There's one that means he's being a jerk, but there's not an insult that means a man is being too aggressive. And so I am comfortable now with the word, because I understand its full history, and I understand that if you're talking to me and you're calling me one because you think I'm being too aggressive in order to progress, in order to evolve, in order to help others, I'm okay with that word being used in my direction today. Now, depends on the context of how you say it, but I think it's a powerful word. And for those that aren't comfortable with the actual B word, we use EB a lot. The podcast that I host is Efficiency B, for that reason as well. It doesn't have to be the full B word. It's really up to the beholder on how they want to use it. But the premise and the real foundation of it is falling in love with your future self and making your future self as efficient and as happy as possible.
I love that premise. And you know, have you ever listened to Meghan Markle's podcast, Archetypes or Archetypes? I don't know what you want to.
Gosh, yes, and I'm blanking on it, but I know this.
When you were telling this story, I was like, that's a perfect podcast episode for her. So maybe you want to pitch her. But she talks about like the different archetypes. Oh God, I don't know why. I can't figure out how to pronounce that. It's like niche, you know, one of those kinds of words. But just how there's like, you know, they had one on like a prima donna. They had one on selfish, like ambitious. Like they just take a look at these words that are used to describe women, and they really break it down about how the word originated and how it's kind of morphed over time. And so bitch would be a perfect one.
You know, I may have to call her and see if
that's what I'm thinking. And then if you do get on the show, make sure you plug me and Anita chat.
Oh, I will.
And listeners, if you're taking any of Melissa's advice, because it was all really great advice, make sure you don't unsubscribe to my emails, okay?
True that. There's always caveats to who you're supposed to unsubscribe from. But, you know, for anybody that's out there that is sending emails to their people, consider what you're cluttering their inbox with. Like, there are some amazing people out there, in particular, being a podcaster, we connect with a lot of other people, and most of us have email lists. And as long as there's value, and as long as it's not spammy and it's helpful and it's infrequent, I am on board. I will read them. Maybe I don't read it every month, but I'll stay on the list and read it from time to time. But there are some that it's like 85 emails a day, and I have no time for that. I have no space for that in my inbox. And I won't buy. I straight up won't. It won't happen for me. So
I totally hear you. I'm the same way.
It's not an all thing. It's a most thing.
And of course, I was just joking. If
I know,
you
but
don't
still,
find
it's fun to
value
talk about.
from what I'm sending, the last thing I want to do is clutter up your life, because I'm all about simplifying and amplifying and doing all things wonderful. So
true that.
Yeah, definitely unsubscribe if you're not finding value. But I tend to do it a weekly, and it's usually just to let people know that there's a new episode in case you're not subscribing to it, and to give them a little bit of a sneak peek about, you know, what the episode's all about and why it's important to me. So On that note, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated hearing about this amazing acronym. I love the framework. I love what it stands for. I love the actionable advice that you gave us. And I will be sure to include contact information for you in our podcast episode. So, for anyone listeners tuning in that want to stay in touch with Melissa, stay plugged into her network, feel free to do so. With that, thank you for coming again, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Anita Chat podcast. If you haven't taken a minute to leave a review, I would absolutely love to hear from you. All you need to do is to search for the show, click your star rating, and type in a few words. Also, if there's a specific topic you'd like to see covered in this podcast, if you'd like me to be your coach, or if you want to just chat, feel free to send me an email or shoot me a message through my IG, which you'll find in the show notes. The show notes will also contain any links to the freebies that were referenced in this episode. Until next time, friends, it's been great chatting with you.